Welcome to Agents in Action. So at Purpose Lab, experimentation and conversations are a key part of how we learn and innovate. Gen AI and Agentic AI are transforming how financial institutions operate, innovate, and compete. But what lies beyond the hype and the buzzwords is a more nuanced story of implementation challenges, regulatory hurdles, and business transformation. Over the next 8 episodes, you will get to hear from industry leaders who are navigating this revolution firsthand. So join us for a conversation about what works, what doesn't, and how today's decisions are shaping tomorrow's financial ecosystem. A very warm welcome to our first episode of Agents in Action. At the Purpose Lab studio today, we have Pedro and we have Sanjay Saini. Pedro is a global AI and digital transformation leader. He's a 2-time TEDx speaker. He's also the author of the best-selling book, How AI Will Shape Our Future. Pedro is also named amongst the top 100 global innovators in data and analytics. Sanjay is the CEO and co-founder of TriVision AI, and you look specifically at financial services and supply chain and using AI agents to look at workflows. So Pedro, I'll get the first question to you. What is the intersection of human and artificial intelligence?
The key thing to remember about how humans can work with artificial intelligence is that it is not AI versus human, it's AI with human or human with AI. So artificial intelligence will focus on optimization of processes, optimization of work, but humans will remain in touch with prioritization.
There's a lot of buzz around generative AI and agentic AI, but I'm sure there's a big gap between the hype and the reality.
Typically, when there is a new technology, the difference between being successful or not is how good are you at scaling your pilots, because that requires integrating the technology with your other systems that you might have in your bank or in your company. That requires integrating it with the governance of your business. That requires also changing in the processes, changing the mindsets so that pilot can scale.
Are the financial institutions, really looking at AI's true potential, or are they missing the mark?
All financial institutions are looking at artificial intelligence. Nobody is betting against artificial intelligence. And every financial institution is starting to build a roadmap of what are the use cases that they want to implement in order to transform the business.
When I look at financial institutions now, the legacy systems and the way the organization is designed, it's just so much friction in implementation.
Most of the friction does not come from the technology itself, it comes from the people. For internal employees, there has to be a big emphasis on training people, all the employees on AI systems that they can use in their daily life, how they can create agents that are helping them with their email, how they can create agents that are helping them with daily tasks that they have in the normal life, how can they make best use of chatbots and this kind of applications. So there are a number of courses that focus on that, and they are very, very successful. I think this is a must for internal employees. The second is new employees that you want to hire. So banks will increasingly hire people with generative AI capabilities, and the way of attracting them is different. Things that have worked in my experience, and I have done it multiple times, is doing a hackathon where you are hiring engineers. And I think that works much better than companies that have created siloed teams with ex-consultants or ex-MBAs that are very expensive. They bring a different culture, and they are not able to work with the rest of the people.
And the capabilities that you're talking about are really the next generation of capabilities that you need to build. And yes, it's much easier for an engineer to engage with an engineer on their terms, and you spend the time with them. The experience for both parties is a lot better, I think.
The long-term future is going to be with artificial intelligence. There will be challenges, of course. There will be a lot of advantages. There will be a huge creation of opportunities for most people, but we have to make sure that everybody is able to take on those opportunities. So in that sense, I believe that financial institutions and corporates in general, they are responsible for upskilling the people so that they can benefit from the new jobs that are going to appear, so that they can benefit from, the different opportunities, business opportunities. And I think companies have to keep this mindset that things are going to change all the time. Having this mindset that no matter what happens, you have to make things simpler, better, and faster, and that's a continuous work.
Why can't we have an engagement in such a way that these new technologies get incorporated as a forward deployment model rather than just trying to do it?
The other way is that most big organizations are going to be working with multiple technologies at the same time, multiple LLMs.
Correct.
So there is not going to be a big company that is only going to have this particular chatbot. Every company is going to have multiple chatbots. This one is very good for customer service. The other one is good for investigations. So you are having a portfolio of technologies, and you are always updating that portfolio of technologies. We're talking about agents today. So one of those capabilities is multi-agents, which is having teams of agents, and the other one will be synthetic data. So I think, of course, there will be companies that are already working on this, but I think most companies have not yet adopted it, and it will be the next stage. So multi-agents is teams of agents, of course. The supervisor of that team is still a human. There might be agents and humans working together. And by teams of agents who are autonomous, an example will be loan applications. You might have an agent that receives the applications. Maybe the applications are in paper. So one agent is converting that with OCR and understanding what is written there. Another one is checking the details. Another one is assessing the risk of the customer. Another one is checking for compliance. Another one is specialized in communicating to the customer, hey, this information is missing. This is the documents that you have to sign. Another one after that might be specialized in monitoring how the payments of the client. So then you have a team of agents, and in that team, certain parts might be done by human beings. You will still have this maker-checker dichotomy that we have in banks, in which certain parts of the maker are AI, certain parts of the checker could be AI as well, but the human is always in the loop.
Actually, this is a good one because Sanjay and I have been like head deep in the maker-checker process. We were thinking about transaction intelligence as an anchor, and then thinking about the multiple conversations we can have with this configuration with agents. But the dichotomy that we're facing, to be honest, Pedro, is when a large organization, they look at transformation as a very systematic way of evolving. So the digital transformation journey has a start and it has an end. And it's usually, they look at perfection over 5 years. What we've been sort of saying, our pitch has been, hey, don't go for perfection, something small now, and then incrementally keep adding the small pieces. Is that a realistic way of looking at it?
I think that transformation is a continuous transformation. Particularly, we are talking about human transformation. Banks in this part of the world, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, they started to bet very heavily on digital transformation. Many banks already have assistants for relationship managers. It's now it comes with generative AI. You have to see it as a continuous exercise so that you keep competitive, so that you are continuing giving the best you can to your customer and to society at large, because I think big companies, particularly now in the age of AI, they have to take responsibility. They have to take responsibility for training people. They have to take responsibility for maintaining humans as the center of this change and maintaining humans in control.
What are key capabilities which can be really helpful to make ethical and responsible AI usage?
So there are many aspects of ethics in AI. So one of the aspects is transparency. Implementing transparency is with traditional analytics is relatively simple. With AI becomes more complicated, and I think it's important to keep that. So implementing transparency means that you know what the data is that is used for this decision, where it comes from, what is the whole lineage. You understand how you are able to explain how the decision is made in terms of algorithm. Sometimes you might not be able to say it in detail, but you understand the drivers and you understand roughly how it works. The second part that is very important is consent. And consent means that you are doing things that the customer has consented. And in order to implement these two things and other different aspects of ethics in data and AI, because it's quite complex, what is important is to make sure that everybody in the organization is thinking about ethics. Ethics is not a checkbox, but ethics is a design. It's something that is built by design. And you need to keep people asking these questions. Basically, is this thing that we are doing, or the way we are doing this thing, or this system we are implementing, or these decisions we are making, what would the customer think? Rather than saying, what would audit think? Just think about the customer. Would the customer approve it? Yes. Okay, then continue doing it.
And do you think the landscape has evolved over the last decade? I'd say you've got your traditional AML, fraud, and risk systems. And because they've always been rule-based, there's a big role that generative AI and AI agents can play in sort of moving that, at least shifting that a couple of notches up. But the willingness of the banks to sort of explore that has been a little bit, I don't think it's the unwillingness, it's just how to navigate that landscape has been a bit challenging.
What generative AI can do to help in fraud in particular is with the investigations. There are a number of flags that are a number of alarms that happen. Those alarms probably will continue being rule-based. Then there is an analysis. That analysis often is done by a person. It can take a lot of time. But with generative AI, you can automate the research, you can automate the case, and you can identify whether this is a case that is easy to handle by AI, or is a complex case because there are many parties involved, because there are different alarms, and then you decide that case to be handled by a human. So the right way of understanding the autonomy is exactly that. Is one of the zones is completely AI, the other extreme will be completely human. And then you have in the middle either the process is run by AI and checked by a human, or the process is done by a human and checked by AI.
Most of the teams working with these systems are asked, they're not the traditional teams that we generally put in front of AI systems and ask them to sort of absorb it, right? So these are the compliance teams or the risk teams, and these are teams that we traditionally didn't want them to engage with technology as much. That was not part of their scope.
But when you talk to these teams and you show them how a bot can, for example, automate the research process for a fraud case, they love it because it's very, very simple. Because basically is, hey, I am suspecting that this particular company might be doing something strange. Could you please write a report with all the publicly available information about this company?
Now it's not only internal data, but you can absorb external data from public sources and bring both the information together to really identify something bad is happening here.
You're the best-selling author in 2024. The book was released. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So this is my first book, got published a few months ago. And I try to explain artificial intelligence. I try to do it in a simple way, explaining how it developed, who are the people that got involved, what are the stories for the development of machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, etc. And also what is going to happen over the next few years, what is the good things that I think are going to happen, what are the challenges that I think we are going to face. I talk about the geopolitics of artificial intelligence, which is becoming quite prominent these days. And then I go towards topics that are related to the longer-term future of AI, which are these things about superintelligence, consciousness, and how this is going to impact society at large in the next decades. And I think it's going to be completely transformational.
I think if we underestimate it, we do it at our own peril, because the world, it has changed. It's changed the way we interact with the systems, the world, definitely. I like the part that where you've sort of bought a person that, like you mentioned, somebody who's not super knowledgeable about AI and what their passage should be, and sort of how they can learn things and how they can adopt different systems. I thought that was very, very, very relevant.
That's correct. So one of the things I say is, what are the skills as a person? What are the skills that are going to matter in the next few years? And I think is something very, very important, because we all care about remaining relevant.
Relevant,
right?
exactly.
And for me, the skills are these ones. So the first one will be adaptability. A lot of things are going to change. You have to be adaptable. You're going to start working on something this year, next year something else. The year after, you're going to have to change jobs. You're going to be continuously changing. And people who adapt best are going to be the people that are going to be successful in AI. So that's number one. Number two is going to be entrepreneurship. It's about finding new ways. It's about finding new things. It's about doing things different, enabling changes in your business, in your daily life. And the last one for me is critical thinking. And critical thinking means fundamentally, we are not outsourcing our thinking capacity to ChatGPT or to a chatbot. We are still thinking. I think one of my concerns about artificial intelligence is when I start seeing people that are starting to delegate that thinking capacity. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. People that are starting to write all their emails with artificial intelligence. And one of my concerns is when you see sometimes young people that don't know how to write emails anymore. And for example, in our generation, when you write your resume, you spend weeks to write your resume. And when you invite it to the interview, you realize there's nothing. So I think keeping that thinking ability, critical thinking, is fundamental. We are not delegating our thinking process to AI. We're just using AI as an augmentation to do faster, to do more things, but we are still in charge and we still have to think for ourselves.
I think it's a gift to be able to do this at this time. And it's such a pleasure to have you at our studio, Pedro. And a massive thank you to all of you who've joined us. We will have a few more episodes like this with leaders like Pedro, who will walk us through this new emerging opportunity and how we can respond to it as leaders in this space, as technologists, as well as industry leaders.